What's going on, guys? Jeff here for Mad Hatter's Reef, and today we're going to be taking a look at selecting corals for the Pico Reef tank. What's up, guys? Jeff here, and today we got a brand new video for you. And if you're new to what we're doing here, this is where I talk about reef tank related topics. So if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the bell so you can be notified every time that I upload a new video. Now today we're going to be taking a look at some corals that we're going to be selecting for the Pico Reef tank. So without further ado, let's jump into it. All right, folks, so we got a brand new giveaway that we are going to announce today, and this is for a Lifeguard Turbo Reactor. And all you need to do to enter to win is comment on this video, hit the like button, and be a subscriber of Mad Hatter's Reef. It doesn't hurt to hit the bell so you can be notified every time that I upload a new video, because every video that I'm uploading for this month will be included in the giveaway, and I will work my way to one lucky winner of this turbo reactor. So hit the like button, leave a comment down below, subscribe, hit the bell, let's get it. So last week we took a look at adding a fish and some snails, hermit crabs, to the Pico Reef tank, and these were all livestock that you guys had voted on in a previous video where we were kind of doing some research and figuring out what was going to be a good fit for this size reef tank. And if you guys want to check out that video, there's going to be a link in the description so you can kind of catch up on the Pico Reef tank build and be up to date on that. Now, as far as corals, we're going to be doing the same format. You guys have already voted on the corals that are going to be going into the Pico Reef tank, and what we're going to do now is kind of jump into some of those options that I gave you on that poll, and then we'll cover what actually you guys voted on in this video, and we're also going to go over some of those corals that were up for voting right now. So without further ado, let's jump into the group of corals that I kind of had figured out what was going to work well in such a small reef tank. Up first, we got Acans, and Acans are probably some of the most magnificently colored LPS corals that are available to hobbyists. Now, as far as Acans go, I do have some concerns about them, but in the grand scheme of things, they do have some characteristics that make them an ideal candidate for a smaller aquarium. They are relatively slow growers. That's always something that's very important when you are considering corals for a Pico Reef tank. They're a good neighbor. They're not a coral that's going to go out there and sting a bunch of neighbors. It's not something that's going to be a coral that is just battling for space. That also is something that's very important to consider when you are looking at corals and what you're going to put into a Pico Reef tank. And I would say lastly, their growth pattern is pretty ideal for a smaller aquarium. They don't kind of go everywhere. They don't grow out straight. They kind of grow in these little domes and very slowly over time, and they're really good neighbors. So those are all the things that I really like about Acans in relation to a Pico Reef tank. And my concern with this coral is I haven't always had great success with it, and for me it tends to do better in a system that I just keep my hands out of, which I don't think is going to be the case with the Pico Reef tank. Next up for consideration on the Pico Reef tank build was the Duncan coral, and as far as the Duncan goes itself, there isn't a whole lot of coloration with it. Typically you see it in this green coloration. There's also some bluish purple ones that are floating around out there. And as far as LPS corals go, this is probably one of the most hardy, beginner-friendly LPS corals that are available to hobbyists. Why I think that this is a absolutely great coral for a Pico Reef tank is the fact that it is incredibly hardy. It's very accepting of swings and parameters, and it also, from a growth standpoint, is kind of, I would say, moderate growth rate. They do branch, so there's a probability that you're going to have to eventually frag this coral. But what I absolutely love about the Duncan coral, especially when it comes to beginners and looking for something outside of soft corals, is that I would consider this a indicator coral. Now, what I mean by that is that this coral is going to let you know that there's something wrong in the system. Whether it be the water temp's off, the salinity's off, or your nitrates are too high, this coral is going to close up and it's not going to open up like you see in this picture. It's going to basically notify you that there is something going on and you need to start testing your water parameters to figure that out. And that's why I absolutely love this coral for a Pico Reef tank, and especially for beginners. Now, next up we got Zoanthids, and Zoanthids are always great to have in any reef tank. Now, what I like about them in a Pico Reef tank is that they are relatively hardy. They're going to deal with those temperature swings or salinity swings that may happen in a smaller volume of water, and be forgiving, not absolutely just keel over and die. They're going to take it on the chin and they're going to keep on marching. One thing that I'd be concerned about, and it's going to be specific to a type of zoanthid, because different morphs grow at different rates, and if you grab one of those morphs that grows a little bit too fast, it potentially could take over that tank relatively quickly. Especially being a small Pico Reef tank, you're only dealing with a couple of gallons of water, and if you have one of those really aggressive zoanthids, it could definitely take over that tank in a hurry. Now, if you are completely new to the hobby and unfamiliar with zoanthids, one thing that you need to do some research on is paleotoxins. Paleotoxins are incredibly toxic to humans, pets, animals, and if you mishandle zoanthids, you potentially could put yourself or somebody that you love in the hospital. So make sure that you do your research. Make sure that you protect yourself anytime that you are handling zoanthids. And then we got the good old-fashioned candy cane coral. Now, this is a coral that I've absolutely loved the entire time that I've been in the hobby. It was one of the very first LPS corals that I ever had. As far as coloration goes, there's not a huge selection out there, and I can think of it 2 to 3 right off the top of my head. This is probably the most common. This is called the kryptonite or the green neon candy cane coral. And when I'm thinking about corals and a Pico Reef tank, the reason that I would consider a candy cane coral is many of the same reasons that I would a Acan. It's a good neighbor. It doesn't grow tremendously fast, even though it will grow faster than an Acan. Its growth pattern is a little bit different. It's not going to be these little mini brain coral domes. It is a branching style of coral, much like how you would see a hammer. And one thing that I really think that puts the candy cane coral a leg up on Acans is how hardy they are. They are incredibly hardy, incredibly forgiving, which makes them a good candidate for a beginner and also makes them a great candidate for a Pico Reef tank. All right, folks, so here are the results of the poll, which you guys voted for all the corals that we had talked about in that previous video, and overwhelmingly, in fact, 60% of the vote went to all of them. So we are going to be putting candy canes, we're going to be putting Duncans, Acans, Zoanthids into the Pico Reef tank with one audible, and I don't know why I didn't originally put this coral on this list. I know that there's only so many options that I can put into a poll, and when I was looking at this list of corals, I kind of felt like it was a little offset, and it needed a little more soft corals in it, and so does the Pico Reef tank. And that coral that I want to add to the list is the Ricordea. I absolutely love Ricordeas. They were a little bit more widely available back in the day, or at least when I first got into the hobby. And as far as colorations go, they are absolutely phenomenal. You have greens, you got blues, you got oranges. I believe there's even some pinks out there, and they offer a lot of different colorations, much similar to your Zoanthids and your Acans, where some of the corals that we talked about in this list typically are green or blue. This one offers a ton of different colors. And what I absolutely love about Ricordeas is what you see is what you get. This isn't a play on lighting. It's some of the absolute most beautiful colorations, very vivid in its color, and it's almost like a day glow type situation with this coral. It's not like your Zoanthids where you could see a picture online, you end up getting the coral shipped to your house, and it doesn't look anything like what you saw on the website. That's not what happens with Ricordeas. What you see is what you get. And they're a great candidate for a Pico Reef tank, and that's why we're going to add one to ours. Hey guys, you voted for it, and that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to be putting all the corals plus some extras into the Pico Reef tank, as long as it is a hardy coral that's going to be able to withstand the temperature fluctuations, salinity fluctuations that potentially could happen in such a small container. Now there's something completely new that I've started here on Mad Hatter's Reef, and that is the Reef Club. Now if you are unfamiliar with what this is, there is a join button underneath this video, and another video will kind of explain it in a little bit more detail if you're interested. And there's some pretty awesome stuff that's already happened over there, and so I want to thank everybody who has signed up already. And I'm definitely excited for the future of this Reef Club and where it goes from here. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this one. I want to thank you for joining me. If you want to check out some of the stuff that we talked about in today's video, there's links down in the description below where you can do a little bit more looking around or whatever it is that you do here on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me. If you enjoyed this one, make sure you hit the thumbs up, and I'll see you next week right here with a brand new video.